One.
Hello, welcome to my vlog. My name is Javon Calisette, and I'm going to talk about the wonderful world of special education. The question that I'm presenting today is, what is one of the most critical issues in special education today? Now, there are a lot of things we can talk about. There are a lot of things that come up in the news, a lot of things that special education teachers talk about are issues. But we're not going to talk about any of the acronyms. We're not going to talk about training precisely for special education teachers anyway, or a number of other issues. Today, we're going to specifically talk about general education teachers. This might come as a surprise to people that why would we talk about special education or general education teachers when this is a whole vlog about special education teachers. Well, first I want to bring up this quote from Rand. This is a special publication that they put out, and it says that teachers matter more to student achievement than any other aspect of schooling. Now, if teachers are the most important factor, and we are living in an inclusive schooling environment age, then it's not just about having great special education teachers, but we need great general education teachers that can help our students, all of our students with special needs, to be able to master to the best of their ability and reach their highest potential. So really quick, this is just a super simple summary of some different articles that have popped up throughout the web of just talking about how there's a lack of special ed teachers, that teachers in general don't get enough training, and that some people say that teacher training hinders special needs students. And so with the shortage of special ed teachers, we need the efforts of general education teachers to help our students with special needs. We have teachers that don't get enough training in special ed, and that's a severe problem if they're going to be working more and more with students with special needs. And if the training is hindering special needs students, we really need to rework the system of training our teachers. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So how are we going to rework this system of training our general education teachers? Now, before we go there, we're going to do a super quick history lesson. Now, during the Enlightenment period, the 1800s, there was a big push for educating all people and recognizing that, wait, we can learn some really great stuff, and we want to make sure that everybody has access to this information. Now, Itard, he worked with Victor the Wild Boy of Aveyron, and it was groundbreaking for someone to work with a person that had special needs and educate them. And he created an entire pedagogy on how to do this, and he was a pioneer in special education and influenced the entire field from that point on. Moving forward into the 50s in the United States, we have Brown versus Board of Education, which set a precedent for separate but equal education is in fact not equal, and really talks about FAPE, or free access to public education. This was groundbreaking, not just for racial segregation, but also for the segregation that was happening with students that had special needs. Now, even though this was groundbreaking, there's still a lot of growth. There are ugly laws, which literally outlawed people that looked ugly, that looked disfigured and disformed, to walk around in cities. And some of these lasted until the 70s, but also in the 70s, there was the Education for All Handicapped Children's Act, which eventually was renamed to the IDEA. And this was updated most recently in 2004, where they added another I, but nobody talks about that I. And this set the precedence, again, for FAPE, for least restrictive environment, for having the credentials or the process for IEPs, and pretty much everything we know about for special education today and how we do our jobs today was set up in the IDEA. There's also the American Disabilities Act, which was set up in 1990s, and this really shows how recent civil rights for people with special needs is. And ultimately, there's this shift from isolation. People that had special needs were put in asylums and institutions, and very quickly we moved into a period of inclusion with Brown versus Board and the IDEA. So why is this? What's the problem here? Well, with this quick shift, though there was major shifts in special education, it didn't translate into major shifts in general education for students with special needs. General education classrooms ultimately still are segregated. There are teachers that complain, saying they don't know how to work with students with special needs, that they don't have the training, that it's all the special education teacher's job. And when we have teachers saying all these things, that's a disservice to our students, not just my students as a special education teacher, but all of our students in the school. So I want to break down 3 things I want to point out about how we can make better general education training. First of all, we need to focus on training that helps all students. Least restrictive environment. I already brought this up. Least restrictive environment ultimately is saying that if a student did not have a disability, where would they be placed? And that would be the general education classroom, most likely. So we need to work with our special education students to make sure that they can operate within the general education space. And if they're going to operate in that space, the teachers in those classrooms need to understand how to work with those students. It's been cited that all students exhibit special and different learning and behavioral patterns, and that elementary classroom teachers who work with students with special needs and believe that's their responsibility to work with them tend to be more effective overall with all students. So this doesn't just help special education students, but this helps students in all areas. Now, the second thing is that we have this inclusive classroom. The training with general education teachers, we need to make sure that we give them training that really helps them to become better educators, specifically for students with special needs. I'm not going to get involved with talking about what UDL is or as precisely multi-tiered support systems, but UDL is a framework on how to have a more inclusive classroom. Now, in my training as a special education resident, I mentioned UDL to my fellow Gen Ed presidents, and they were mind blown about this framework because they didn't get any training on this, and they really, really were interested in how to implement it. And as we move forward and are moving into more inclusive classrooms and are presenting groundbreaking work in education, we need to make sure that not just special education teachers get this, but all teachers get this to be the most prepared. Multi-tiered support systems. I really want to talk more about this, but effectively, it's set up so that general education teachers are key in multi-tiered support systems, or MTSS. A lot of schools have it twisted where once we get to the students that have the most need, that goes directly to the special ed teachers. That's not true. MTSS has 3 tiers, and all 3 of those tiers are to be operated by the gen ed teacher. Once we get the climax of MTSS, we know that we need to start going to special education interventions. That's when the IEP and assessments happen. Lastly, I want to bring up the impact of training. I can't get into the nitty gritty of this, but I have a quote from one of the articles that I researched, and the links will be in the description, that essentially said that once we put in special education training into general education training, that it helps students that have disabilities with their learning by 60% over the control group. And I'll get the links directly to that in the end of the video. And lastly, the third thing I want to bring up is that we need to combat disproportionality and misidentification. When we have general education teachers that are better trained, we can have better IEPs. We can have students that can, we have teachers that can put in their input during the IEP meetings, and we combat this misidentification, or having students that are put into special ed and they really don't need to be put in special ed. It's really just a better use of MTSS strategies. It's really making sure that we're using the support systems that are already in place. And this way we're not disproportionately putting children of color into special education. If we really go and are talking about how general education teacher training can help students with special needs, we need to talk about inclusivity and how there needs to be training on combating bias. Now, I'm running out of time very quickly, and so I just want to bring up these last 3 points, that our solution is to train special education and general ed teachers together, that gen ed teachers need to fully implement MTSS, and it's a shared responsibility between special ed and general ed teachers to help students with special needs. Thank you for your time. All the links will be at the end of the video.